She banged on my gate with a clipboard in her hand, yelling like she owned the whole valley. "You can't build that dam! The HOA will fine you $250,000! Her voice cracked, as if the number itself gave her power. I stood there, dirt on my hands, boots still wet from checking the water flow, and I couldn't help but laugh under my breath. This land wasn't just mine, it was my grandfather's legacy. But she didn't care about history or law or truth. She wanted control. 2 days later, I found a bright red notice nailed to my cabin door. $250,000 HOA fine. Remove illegal structure immediately. No signature from the county. No court order. Just Karen's shaky handwriting pretending to be official. I took a picture, folded the paper, and slipped it in my pocket. Not once did I argue, not once did I shout back. Instead, I kept working. The dam wasn't about greed, it was about survival. My cattle needed water, my crops needed irrigation, but they twisted the story, telling the neighbors I was stealing the creek. Soon I heard whispers, calls to lawyers, threats of liens. The whole HOA board stood against me. All because Karen told them I was blocking their view, their water, their rights. I stayed calm, but inside, I was burning. They thought they could bury me under fake fines. They didn't know that one decision of mine could change everything. One decision that would expose who really owned the land and who controlled the water flowing right under their homes. And I had already made that decision. That night, the storm rolled in heavy. Rain hammered down. The creek roared louder than ever. And I stood on the ridge watching the dam hold strong. Karen's house lights glowed down in the valley, the biggest and brightest of all. She had mocked me that afternoon, laughing in front of her friends. "Enjoy your little pond, hillbilly. Tomorrow the county takes it down." But tomorrow came sooner than she thought. The pressure of the storm pushed the water higher, beating against the wall. I didn't panic. I'd built it to last. What they didn't know was that the creek had been flooding this valley for decades until my grandfather controlled it. This dam wasn't a crime, it was protection. But Karen saw only dollar signs and power. She marched up in the rain, phone in her hand, live streaming herself. "Everyone, look! Here's the illegal dam. HOA is going to crush him in court. Say goodbye to your scam." She shoved the phone toward my face, her mascara dripping. I didn't move. I just looked down the hill where her neighborhood stretched like a bowl waiting to be filled. "Karen, you might want to step back," I said quietly. She sneered. "From what, your little puddle?" Then it happened. The sound like thunder cracking open the earth. A chunk of water burst over the top, surging down the hill. Her live stream caught it all. The roaring flood racing straight toward the manicured lawns and polished driveways of the HOA elite. Karen spun around screaming, "No! No! No! Not the houses!" The very dam they fined me for was the only thing that had been keeping them safe. By morning, the valley looked like a disaster zone. Cars half submerged, lawns turned into muddy rivers, and Karen's perfect white porch sagging under the weight of water. Neighbors stood in shock, barefoot in the muck, pointing at me like I'd unleashed hell on purpose. Karen didn't waste a second. She marched up, her hair plastered to her face, shrieking loud enough for everyone to hear. "You destroyed our homes! You're going to prison for this!" she spat, jabbing her finger at me. A few others echoed her words, fear turning into anger. One man shouted, "He built it illegally! Arrest him!" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folder I'd been carrying for weeks. Quietly, I opened it and held up the first page. County seal, official signatures, dates stretching back 50 years. This land, this water, and that dam legally belonged to my family. My grandfather registered the water rights in 1971. Every drop flowing through here is under my control. For the first time, Karen hesitated. She blinked at the papers, but quickly tried to recover, yelling, "That can't be real! He forged it! Somebody call the sheriff!" Her timing couldn't have been worse. Two real deputies stepped out of their truck just then, having been called by half the neighborhood. They took one look at the scene, the broken dam, the flooding, the crowd, and then at Karen, still waving her phone like she was the star of the show. I calmly handed the folder to the deputy. He scanned the documents, raised his brow, and said, "Ma'am, this is legal water rights ownership. Looks like your HOA doesn't have a case." Karen's jaw dropped. The neighbors looked at her, then back at me, their faces twisting with confusion. But the deputies weren't finished. One of them turned to Karen and asked, "And you're the one who filed this HOA fine notice?" Her face went pale. Karen stammered, clutching her clipboard like it could shield her. I was just enforcing the rules. He violated community standards." Her voice cracked, weaker now, but still dripping with arrogance. The deputy held up the so-called fine notice she had nailed to my cabin door. "This isn't county paperwork. No legal seal, no court approval, just your handwriting. Ma'am, this looks like falsifying official documents." The crowd murmured, neighbors whispering to each other. A woman gasped, "Wait, you mean this wasn't real?" Another man growled, "Karen made us all pay fees last year for lakefront maintenance." The deputy's eyes narrowed. "If you've been collecting money under false pretenses, that's fraud. You realize that, right?" Karen's face flushed bright red. She spun toward the neighbors, desperate. No, don't listen to him. He's the criminal. He let the water loose on purpose." I finally spoke, steady and calm, my voice cutting through the noise. "The dam broke because of the storm. You wanted it gone, remember? You demanded I remove it. Well, you got what you wanted." The silence that followed was heavier than the flood itself. For the first time, Karen had no script, no fake authority to lean on. Her neighbors' glares shifted from me to her, and I could see it, the power slipping out of her hands like water through a sieve. Then the deputy stepped forward. "Ma'am, you need to come with us. We're going to have some more questions about these fines you've been handing out." Karen froze, her mouth opening and closing with no sound. The same people who once cheered her on now stood back, arms crossed, watching her squirm. And I wasn't done yet.
Karen's protests turned into wild thrashing as the deputies tried to guide her toward the patrol car. "You can't arrest me! I'm the HOA president! I run this community!" she screamed, her voice cracking under the weight of desperation. But the neighbors weren't moved. Some even filmed with their phones, muttering things like, "About time," and "She took thousands from us." I leaned against the fence post, letting the storm-wet wind cool my face. "You know what's funny?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She fined me for saving this valley. But I kept records. Every fake notice, every dollar she squeezed out of you, it's all on file." From my truck, I pulled out a small hard drive and held it up. Security cameras don't just record the dam. They recorded her sliding fake letters under doors, collecting cash with no receipts, even threatening folks when they questioned her. The crowd erupted. A man shouted, "She told me if I didn't pay, she'd have my truck towed." A woman added, trembling, "She made me write a check for $5,000, said it was for emergency road repairs." All eyes were on Karen now, her face pale as the deputies exchanged looks. One of them took the drive from my hand. This could turn into a criminal investigation. Fraud, impersonation, extortion. He let the words hang heavy. Karen's knees buckled. No, this is my neighborhood. I built this place," she wailed, but no one believed her anymore. The same neighbors who once bowed to her authority now stepped back like she carried a disease. I kept my voice calm, steady, and just sharp enough to cut. "You thought you could drown me in fines. Instead, you drown your own kingdom." The deputies opened the patrol car door. Karen looked at me one last time, pure venom in her eyes, but she couldn't stop what was already in motion.
The queen of the HOA was finally dethroned. And still, I hadn't revealed my strongest card. The deputies were ready to drive her off when one of them turned back to me. "Sir, we'll need a formal statement at the station. This case is bigger than a neighborhood dispute." Karen, already half inside the car, snapped her head up. "See? He's guilty too! Take him in!" Her voice was shrill, desperate, clinging to the last scraps of control. I didn't flinch. Slowly, I reached into my wallet and slid out a leather badge holder. I flipped it open, and the silver glint caught the flashing lights of the patrol car. The air shifted. Neighbors gasped. Even the deputies straightened. "I'm not just a landowner," I said evenly. "I'm a federal water rights inspector. Every dam, every creek, every reservoir in this county runs through my office before it runs through yours." Karen froze, her mouth hanging open. You're lying!" But the deputies already knew better. One nodded. "Sir, we've heard about your unit. That explains why you have the original water rights documentation." The crowd buzzed with disbelief. The very man Karen had branded as a criminal was the one with higher authority than anyone in the valley. A woman muttered, "She went after him? She's finished!" Karen thrashed again in the back seat, screaming, No, this isn't fair! He tricked us all!" But her voice was drowned out by the sound of neighbors cheering, some clapping, others recording the moment for proof. I looked straight at her, calm as stone. "You thought you could drown me in fines. Instead, you drown your own kingdom." The deputies opened the patrol car door. Karen looked at me one last time, pure venom in her eyes, but she couldn't stop what was already in motion. The queen of the HOA was finally dethroned. And still, I hadn't revealed my strongest card. I walked back down into the mud while deputies and county officials sorted through the evidence, but I didn't leave it to them alone. This was my family's land and my duty. I handed over copies of the water rights, the hard drive, and a list of every fake notice Karen had slipped under doors. I also filed the formal motion to put the HOA under state receivership until a full audit could be done. The county froze the HOA bank account that afternoon. No more secret fees, no more maintenance checks vanishing into one woman's pockets, and they named a temporary board of real homeowners to manage repairs. The news vans arrived by evening, cameras catching the moment when Karen's name was read aloud with charges: fraud, impersonation, extortion. Her neighbors watched, some with tears, some shaking their heads in shame. And one by one they came to me, not to thank me like a hero, but to ask how to fix what had been broken. I stayed, rolled up my sleeves, and helped redirect pumps to empty basements, set up sandbag lines, and teach folks how to read their property deeds. I didn't gloat when the judge signed the permanent injunction dissolving the HOA's old board. I only said what needed to be said. You don't get to own people's lives with paper and lies. Months later, the valley was cleaned and rebuilt, with a new community council elected by the homeowners, transparency in every meeting, and a small trust set up to maintain the creek so this never happens again. Karen lost more than her title. She lost the trust of everyone around her, and when she left the valley, her house sat empty, a warning nobody missed. Standing on my grandfather's ridge at sunset, watching kids splash in a safe, steady stream, I felt the weight of those old papers in my pocket and smiled quietly. I fought to protect what was ours, not for revenge, but for duty. And that, more than any fine or badge, was what kept this place free. Weeks later, word of what happened in our valley spread far beyond the county line. Local news ran the headline, HOA president arrested after $250K fake fine scam backfires. People from other towns began calling me, some just to say thank you, others to share their own stories of HOA abuse. It seemed Karen wasn't the only tyrant hiding behind clipboards and fake rules. One evening, I stood outside the cabin porch when a convoy of trucks pulled up. Veterans, farmers, single parents, folks from all over the state. They shook my hand, some with tears in their eyes. "You gave us hope," one man said. "You showed we don't have to bow down to bullies pretending to be the law." I didn't give speeches. I wasn't running for office. I just told the truth. All it takes is one person willing to stand their ground. Land is freedom. Never let anyone find you out of it. The county later announced a full investigation into HOA boards across the region, using the evidence from Karen's hard drive as the starting point. Dozens of fake fines and scams were uncovered, saving families millions. And as for Karen, she faced trial in front of the same neighbors she used to rule. Watching her shuffle in with shackles on her ankles, head down, was the closure nobody expected, but everybody needed. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, the courtroom erupted in applause, not because of me, but because justice had finally cracked the mask of untouchable power. That night, back on the ridge, I whispered to the valley like my grandfather once did. "This land takes care of us as long as we take care of it." The water ran steady, clear, and free. And for the first time in years, so did the people who lived beside it.